Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. You are watching Zenith Glow Astrology, and I am Christina, the astrologer running this show. Today, we are talking about the upcoming full buck moon in Capricorn, which is happening on July 10th. The full moon will be exact at 4:36 p.m. No, is that right? Yeah, 4:36 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Kind of tripped myself up there for a second. And it's going to be at 18 degrees 49 minutes of Capricorn. So, we have a lot happening in the month of July in general. Just a few things I want to mention in case I am unable to do videos on them. I probably will, but just in case, it's good to mention. So, first of all, the day that I'm recording this is the day that Uranus just moved into Gemini. Woo! Party, party! So excited. Today is also my dog's birthday. Happy birthday, Aoife. So we have that happening. Uranus just moved into Gemini. That's a really big shift of energy. We are most definitely feeling that. We also have the full moon, which we're going to talk about here in a minute, happening on the 10th. A couple days later, Saturn goes retrograde. About a week after that, less than a week after that, Mercury goes retrograde. The week after that, we have the Mayan Day of Time and Day of Time, the Mayan Day out of time. I mean, I guess it could be the Day of Time if you're thinking about the nature of time and what does that mean for us. Okay, not going to get lost in that. Freudian slip. So the Mayan Day out of time will be on July 25th. And then a few days after that, we have the Lions Gate portal opening, which will be on the 28th. Oh, we also have Leo season starting on the 22nd. So bam, 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 bam. We've got all these different astrological and energetic events all happening within the month of July. So let's talk about the Capricorn full moon, which is the buck moon, and that is happening this week in just a few days. So, this full moon is interesting because it's making some significant aspects and it's bringing in some unique energy. Now, I do believe, I mean, come on, this entire year is about change and transformation. We are still very much under the influence of that Chinese astrological year energy, which is the energy of the wood snake. Ooh, mama, it has been very intense. And I don't know about you guys, but I've been feeling it like a slow burn. Like it's just always kind of intense and you sort of get used to it. And then you have these peak moments where it gets even more intense and then you sort of adapt. And yeah, but for me, I haven't like gotten an official break from the intensity. So, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that might be our motto for this year. I don't know. It's going to be my motto. Um, all right. So, moving on, let's go ahead and pull up a chart to look at all the astrological configurations happening with this full buck moon in Capricorn. Boom. All right. So, here's my little chart that I've crafted for you. Okay, so we obviously have the sun in the sign of Cancer, and it is opposite of the moon, which is in Capricorn. And thus, we have a full moon. We also have the moon and the sun making an aspect to the nodal axis. Okay, now these are more harmonious aspects that we see, or more fluid aspects happening. So the sun is trine with the north node, the moon is trine with the south node. Okay, that's pretty interesting because even though Cancer as an energy does relate to tradition and it does kind of want to look back towards the past, it is a cardinal sign. So it also has this sense of initiative and wanting to push forward towards the future. And I think we are bringing some of that energy into this north node kind of aspect happening between the sun and the north node. Now, on the other hand, just in general, the moon relates a lot to our past because it has to do with our past conditioning, in particular, our emotional conditioning. And then, of course, the moon rules the sign of Cancer. So we actually have the moon ruling the sun in this case. And it's also bringing that flavor of energy into the north node because not only is it ruling the sun, which is trine the North Node, but it's also sextile with the North Node itself. So then we also have the moon trine with the South Node, right? And then the South Node, of course, most of us know, already pertains to the past, right? It is our past lives, our past history, what we bring with us karmically into this life, what sort of gifts and talents we have, but also what kind of uh, deviations we will naturally defer towards as a kind of wow, what is happening to me right now? I think Uranus is like, whew, putting other thoughts in my brain, and it's like distracting me from what I'm actually saying. My brain is like 5 steps ahead of what I'm actually saying, and that was a very weird feeling. Okay, folks, you are witnessing a Uranus impact live, and it's a little zany. Anyway, South Node is what we will naturally deviate toward out of a sense of habit because we've already mastered those things or it's just part of our recurring patterns. Okay. And so, the South Node is not all bad. We definitely bring in gifts and talents that can be utilized and can help us move into the expression of the North Node in this life. But there is, also some of the other stuff. There are some of those conditions and tendencies that maybe don't serve us so well that we maybe need to shed. And yes, full moons relate to shedding, culmination, release, and harvest and realization. So we are definitely dealing with all of those energies at this time. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other things that are happening now. So apart from the aspects with the nodal axis, which, by the way, I also want to mention that Mars in Virgo is conjunct with the South Node. It's kind of a looser conjunction, but it is conjunct with it. So that's also factoring into the energies right now. Now, as the sign of Capricorn, the moon being in Capricorn, the ruler of Capricorn is Saturn. So Saturn is also playing a very strong role in this full moon event. That's interesting because Saturn is actually stationed right now, meaning it's about to turn retrograde. It actually turns retrograde on July 12th, so 2 days after this full moon, which means that that energy is very much impacting the full moon itself. So we are feeling very, very strong Saturn retrograde vibes at this time. And it is funneling into the energy of this full moon. And it's part of the culmination of things. It's part of what we are releasing, right? And then just in general, as an energetic signature, retrogrades also have to do with going back over the past, right? They're kind of looking back at where we've been. So again, we have this energy. And I mentioned Cancer does that, right? Like Cancer looks sort of at tradition and at the past. Capricorn does the same thing, just on a wider, more societal, reputational scale versus home and family and values and psychological self, which is Cancer. So we have all of these themes arising at this time, right? But because Saturn is in the sign of Aries, we're also getting this energy of Aries kind of funneling into the moon, the full moon, and that energy. And then Saturn is conjunct with Neptune. Neptune recently went retrograde as well, you guys. So we are in like retrograde season right now. And so, in a very general sense, we could say that Neptune is sort of putting Saturn under the pressure of spiritualizing the ego, right? And disciplining ourselves in a way to spiritualize the ego and to be able to navigate our sense of self with that energy, even though it can be very discombobulating. So, all of that is feeding into this full moon, right? And those are just long term themes that have been ongoing, but they are sort of peaking at this time. Okay. And I think that a lot of this stuff is coming to the fore in preparation for Lionsgate, right? We get this big, beautiful burst of energy, like the alliteration there, around the Lionsgate portal. And there's a lot of like abundance codes and there's heart energy activations going on. But we sort of need to clear the slate a little bit to make room for all these new energies that are coming in. And so this full moon is helping us to do that. We're definitely doing some clearing right now for those of us that find that relevant. So, some other interesting things going on. Now, it might not seem like it on the surface, but Uranus is actually playing a very big role in this full moon, and so is Venus, or at least the concept of relationships. And then, as well, what we value and what we attract to us as a result of those things. Both of these planets are in the sign of Gemini. Again, Uranus just ingressed into the sign of Gemini today. So it's a brand new energy. It's at that 0 degree, so that's heightened, it's amplified. It's conjunct with Venus. Venus is actually square with Mars. It's in a waxing square with Mars, right? And Mars rules Aries. Okay. So, and then Saturn is in the sign of Aries. So you can see how these are all connected, right? So Mars is ruling Saturn. Saturn's ruling the full moon. Venus is squaring Mars. Uranus is conjunct Venus, influencing Venus. So therefore, Uranus is also, or not conjunct, but it's funneling that energy into Mars as well. And then both of those planets are in the sign of Gemini, which which is ruled by Mercury. And we can see that Mercury is actually semi-sextile to Mars, exactly. And it's also in a trine with goddess asteroid Ceres. And a couple other things I want to mention before I break all this down for you. We've also got goddess asteroid Juno in the sign of Scorpio, and she is trine with the sun at this time. That rhymed. Trine with the sun at this time. So, Juno also relates to relationships, particularly marriage, and particularly these themes of like duty and obligation and responsibility when it comes to those long term commitments. And then from a higher perspective, she can relate to the twin flame higher aspect of ourselves. So there's a lot going on, a lot to unpack. We've also got Black Moon Lilith, conjunct goddess asteroid Vesta, also in the sign of Scorpio. So there is just a lot happening right now. And those planets are trine with Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter in Cancer. So I think I pretty much covered all the planets. So let's take our little diagram away so we can talk about it. Hi. So there is definitely a theme of relationships coming up through this full moon, okay? Which is interesting because you don't normally think about relationships when you think about Capricorn. Capricorn can actually be a little bit cold, or it can come across as a little bit cold, and not so emotional per se. But because of those other aspects that I mentioned, and the way that everything is interconnected and all these different planets are influencing each other, we definitely have this predominant theme of relationships. And then we also have a predominant theme of going back over the past. And that is due to the nature of both Cancer and Capricorn having that kind of looking back over your shoulder at what once was as you are pushing forward towards the future, using the foundations that you've already laid in the past to help you progress and build towards what you want to create in the future. Those are kind of similar energies that are held by both of those signs. But we also have the South Node involved, and then we have these retrograde planets. We've got Saturn going retrograde, and then Mercury is also going retrograde. So all of the and we're definitely in the pre-shadow for that right now, folks, just so you know. So if you're starting to feel a little bit of those Mercury retrograde vibes, that's because we're in the pre-shadow. Mercury will go retrograde on July 17th. And then again, Saturn goes retrograde on the 12th. So just 2 days after the full moon, we're very much going to be in the window of the full moon's energy when Saturn goes retrograde. So, and and I forgot to mention that we also have Uranus trine with Pluto right now, and Pluto is also retrograde. So there's a lot of like reflective energy, going back over things. There's a lot of releasing what no longer serves us as we go back over things and analyze things. And then we have the theme of relationships coming in particular, and how we see ourselves in relation to other people or in the context of society, and maybe like our roles like the chosen identities, the little costumes that we wear in society, whatever that might be, whatever titles you have been given or given to yourself throughout your life. Those things are coming up for review right now. And we are looking at, well, actually, we're looking at them in different ways. We're utilizing different perspectives to analyze and review these things. And at the heart of everything going on right now, it all kind of comes down to Uranus. Because, yes, Saturn rules the full moon, but it's in Aries, and then Mars rules Aries. So then Mars is playing a key role, but then Mars is squaring Venus, and it's also semi-sextile with Mercury. And, Mercury rules Uranus or whatever uh, because it's the ruler of Gemini. But everything kind of comes down to this idea of the way that we are looking at things and how our perspective has shaped our reality. And that is coming up from the past, right? So, and then again, you bring Juno, you bring the energy of Scorpio into this, you bring Vesta and Black Moon Lilith. So, in a nutshell, here's what I'm going to say about all of that. We're looking at having former identities and titles and ways of being and doing, tradition, history, habits and patterns. All of this stuff is kind of being stripped away from us in one way or another because it doesn't really serve us anymore. It got us this far, but it's not necessarily a useful tool to carry forward. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to bring any useful tools from the past forward. That's actually part of what we're doing right now is analyzing what do we want to bring forward? What is serving our highest good? What does align with this new version of ourselves that we are crafting at this time? But a lot of this is coming through comparison, right? Because we have this energy of Gemini and the energy of Mercury, and Mercury's in the sign of Leo. Leo is very aware of itself in the context of its audience, of how it is being viewed by other people. And that's also a theme that goes into the sign of Aquarius, right? And Pluto is also factoring into this because it's trine with Uranus. Pluto wants to transform everything, right? It's trying to get us to transform the way that we socialize, the way that we think, the way that we relate to other people. And ultimately, the way that we relate to ourselves, because that's at the core of everything. And I think a really strong theme of Uranus and Gemini through the next 6 years is going to relate to this idea that duality is kind of an illusion. But we'll talk about that in another video. I've been working on some really nerdy philosophical stuff lately. So let's talk about some of these other themes that I mentioned, the Scorpio energy coming into it. Scorpio is a sign that also can relate to relationships because it's about merging, right? Merging with something outside of yourself so that you can cultivate a greater sense of power within yourself. So sometimes that comes through relationships and through intimacy with other people. And as well, it could be just merging with symbols that are outside of yourself. So that can be titles, that can be your career or the role that you play, that can be the things that you're interested in. But it's all of these different components that exist outside of you that you sort of merge with your identity. And that gives you some sort of sense of power because whatever that symbol represents, it's giving you something that you didn't have previously, right? So now that's just in a general way, right? What the energy of Scorpio. But what we're looking at now is how has all of these themes, the relationships, the roles, the titles, the identity, the way that we see things, the way we communicate, all of this, how does it limit our freedom, our authenticity, and our growth? Because again, we're kind of bringing everything back around to Uranus and Gemini, and then Mercury in Leo as well. because, Mercury in Leo is very much going to be tapped into in its higher expression, the heart, our inner child, our true, joyful, loving essence. Okay. And that is going to be the highlight of our perception, the high point of our perception. But Uranus wants us to really look at how we have sort of boxed ourselves in to certain ways of being and seeing and doing things that is limiting our ability to grow and is limiting our truth. Because isn't it true that your truth changes over time, right? I think Ram Dass once said that if you really want to understand truth, you have to get comfortable with the idea that it constantly changes. And that's not an exact quote, I'm paraphrasing, but you get the idea. That is kind of at the heart of all of this, is that truth in general and our truth is going to change and evolve over time. We are going to change and evolve over time. We need to do that. We need to break out of those Saturnian crystallizations if we're going to keep growing. And if we want to keep moving forward into this future, into this spiritual destiny or whatever it is that our soul is calling us to do at this time. And it's part of the evolution of the planet, and it's part of the evolution of human consciousness, and it's part of your evolution as a soul. And in the highest expression, the ideal would be to move into this perception that is unconditionally loving. But the unconditional love has to start with yourself. So part of what's coming up is, how have we been rejected by other people in relationships? How have we rejected ourselves and the truth of who we are and the core essence of who we are? How have we adopted identities or labels or roles that are not really in alignment with our truth and authenticity? And have we carried those things forward just sort of out of a sense of habit or tradition? And what sort of betrayals have we experienced, whether that's through relationships, whether we betray ourselves, whatever it is, that leads to self doubt and that leads to this idea of self judgment and not feeling good enough, not feeling perfect enough. Why do we feel like we are never good enough? And why can we never give ourselves the unconditional love that we are willing to give to other people? And we can't give that love to other people until we give it to ourselves. Again, it kind of all goes back to this perception that we are being shook out of by Uranus. It's sort of zapping us with different ways of looking at things. And because it is conjunct with Venus at this time, it is very much influencing our values and what we are attracting to us and what kinds of relationships we are having, whether that's what is existing now and we are reviewing it and seeking to change it, or whether that's what we are trying to cultivate in the future. So all of these things are coming up right now, and it's a lot. It's a lot, this is not like simple stuff. I mean, I'm sitting here talking about you know, it's aspecting the nodes, but Mars is conjunct with the nodes, and Mars is ruling Saturn, and Saturn's ruling the full moon, but then there's Uranus, and then there's Pluto. Like, it's all kind of connecting, right? It's like this beautiful web of energy that is, all these different planets are sort of pinging off of each other, and they're creating this, like, symphonic signature of kind of theme that's arising. And it's going to be different for each and every one of us. But I guess if you want to simplify things, we could just say that we are clearing the slate. We're having epiphanies right now. Those epiphanies may be coming to us through our relationships, including our relationship with ourselves. We are having themes from the past arise now in the present as we look towards our future to help us figure out, what do we need to change? What do we want to change? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? How am I in alignment? How am I not in alignment? And we're recognizing how everything kind of interplays and influences everything else. And We are given an opportunity at this time. So again, when you are stripped of those roles, when you find yourself suddenly stumbling into a desert without a compass and you can't find your way because you no longer know who you are anymore, which changes where you want to go and what you want to do and how you want to do it. All of that changes when you start to change the core essence of who you are. It is literally shaking you at your foundation. There's actually, amidst the fear and the chaos of that, and the how unnerving that can be, there is an opportunity to really look at things with a fresh perspective. Because when you take away what has already been, what already exists, you are given something totally brand new. You are introduced to this idea of novelty. You are no longer conditioned to follow a specific pattern or groove, whether that's, again, relationships, the role you're playing, the goals that you're setting, the way that you are identifying yourself, the way you're understanding reality. Suddenly, those things are stripped away. Again, scary, but opportunity, because it's all brand new. And you can look at things with a totally fresh perspective. And that's where Uranus comes into this, because not only does it take away everything, but it also gives us something. It will give us that insight. It will give us that direction. It will give us a clue. It will give us a key. And that will help us to move forward and to figure out, what do we want to paint on this blank canvas that we suddenly find ourselves faced with. So ultimately, it comes down to new perspectives. And again, this is a beautiful opportunity. We are entering a very busy season, energetically, astrologically speaking, but it is a high season. It is a season of high frequencies, high energy, downloads, the ability to evolve, the ability to open your heart, the ability to welcome in new consciousness, new abundance, new opportunity. But you got to clear some of the old stuff, some of the gunk, to make space for those things. And that is what we are now faced with, or now presented with, at the time of this full moon, right? And, it's the buck moon, and it's named for that because this is the time of year when male deer, stags, I guess you could say, grow their antlers, where their antlers are like at the peak of their growth. Isn't that like a beautiful metaphor for all of us, that we reach the peak of our growth? You know what also happens with stags when their antlers are big, when they start to grow their antlers? They will actually like rub their heads against trees and things to try to, uh, make them smaller. And they'll break off. They'll actually lose their antlers. They'll shed their antlers. And that's a good thing, because then they're given space to grow new antlers. So, maybe I'm getting a little lost in the weeds here, but the idea is that, antlers are wisdom, right? They're a symbol for wisdom. They're a symbol for attainment. And that very much aligns with the energies of Capricorn, which is interesting, isn't it? So just consider that this is an opportunity for growth and for shedding what no longer serves you, so that you can make room for new growth. And part of that new growth is going to be mastery and wisdom. And it's going to be a new sense of attainment, but it's going to align with whatever new, fresh perspectives you are allowing into your reality. And those fresh perspectives are opening you up to a greater sense of freedom, more wisdom, better understanding, more fulfilling relationships, and definitely a more fulfilling relationship with yourself. So that's what we've got going on. I hope that this was helpful. If you found this helpful, please consider leaving a little tip for me. I'm going to put a donation jar, a virtual donation jar, in the link below. I also do readings, and if you are interested in scheduling an astrology reading, you can go to my website. I will post a link below. You can schedule one of those with me. Otherwise, I want to say thank you so much. Please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you for supporting me. I love you all. I hope you have a beautiful Capricorn full moon experience, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!